When the keepers arrived at the gorilla enclosure that freezing January morning, they found something that made their blood run cold. A tiny kitten, barely 8 weeks old, trapped inside with 6 full-grown gorillas. What happened in the next 3 weeks would challenge everything scientists thought they knew about maternal instinct. Before you watch, remember to like and subscribe so you don't miss another touching story like this one. And write in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there. The emergency call came at 6:47 a.m. We have a code red at the gorilla habitat. The security guard's voice cracked through the radio. There's a cat, a small cat, inside with the gorillas. Dr. Patricia Chen grabbed her keys and ran. A cat in a gorilla enclosure wasn't just dangerous, it was potentially fatal. Gorillas are herbivores, but they're territorial, unpredictable, and strong enough to kill with a single swat. When she reached the observation window, her heart sank. There, in the center of the enclosure, sat Kala, a 180-pound female gorilla who'd never had offspring of her own. And cradled against her massive chest, barely visible between her enormous hands, was a tiny orange tabby kitten. "How long has it been in there?" Dr. Chen asked, her voice tight. "We don't know," Sarah Mitchell, the head keeper, replied. "We just spotted it on the morning camera check." Dr. Chen pulled up the night footage immediately. What she saw made her gasp. A tiny orange tabby kitten with tiger stripes had entered through a small gap in the outer fence at 2:14 a.m. The temperature that night had dropped to -5 degrees Celsius. The tiny creature was shivering violently, its cries high-pitched and desperate. At 2:31 a.m., Kala woke up. She sat up in her nest of straw and stared at the kitten. The other gorillas stirred, curious. Jabari, the 350-pound silverback, moved toward the small intruder, his movements deliberate, his expression unreadable. Then Kayla did something extraordinary. She positioned herself between Jabari and the kitten. She made a low vocalization, a warning. Jabari stopped, studied her for a moment, then retreated. Kayla turned to the kitten. With movements so careful they seemed impossible for hands that large, she reached out with just 2 fingers and lifted the tiny creature. She carried it back to her nest, placed it against the warmth of her chest, covered it gently with straw. The kitten stopped shaking. "She saved it," Sarah whispered, tears in her eyes. She knew it was dying. Dr. Chen's mind raced through protocols. "We need to get that cat out, now. It's too dangerous. One wrong move from any of those gorillas and—" "I know," Sarah interrupted. "But look." On the monitor, Kayla was grooming the kitten with her tongue, the same way she would groom another gorilla. The kitten, now warm, had stopped crying and was nestling deeper into her fur. "She thinks it's hers," Sarah said softly. The first attempt to retrieve the kitten came at 8 a.m. 2 keepers approached the enclosure entrance with a catch pole and thick gloves. The moment they opened the door, Kola's reaction was immediate and terrifying. She scooped up the kitten, pressed it against her chest, and rushed to the far corner. Her vocalizations were aggressive, protective. The other gorillas, sensing her distress, began displaying, chest beating, charging the fence. "Abort!" Dr. Chen shouted into the radio. "Get out now!" The keepers retreated. The situation was worse than they'd feared. "We can't force her," Dr. Chen said, running her hands through her hair. "If we stress her while she's holding something that fragile, she could crush it without meaning to. But that kitten needs food, water, veterinary care. Gorilla milk won't sustain it." "How long does it have?" Sarah asked. Dr. Chen checked her watch. "Maybe 36 hours before dehydration becomes critical. Less if it's already malnourished." They spent the morning watching helplessly as Kayla carried the kitten everywhere. She tried offering it banana. The kitten turned its head away, mewing weakly. Kola made a sound. Confused. Frustrated. She tried apple. Leafy greens. Nothing worked. By noon, the kitten's cries were getting weaker. "It's starving," Sarah said, pressing her hand against the glass. "She's trying so hard, but she doesn't know what it needs." By evening, the situation was critical. The kitten barely moved. Kayla held it constantly, her eyes wide with what looked unmistakably like worry. She made soft vocalizations, the kind mother gorillas make to comfort distressed infants. The other gorillas approached slowly, one by one. They didn't try to touch the kitten, but they brought food to Kayla. Offerings. Bananas, carrots, pieces of sweet potato. They seemed to understand she was caring for something and needed support. But the kitten continued to fade. "We're out of time," Dr. Chen said at 9 p.m. "If we don't get nutrition into that cat by morning, it'll die. We need to go in." "She'll fight us," Sarah said. "And she'll win." Dr. Chen looked at Sarah for a long moment. "You've worked with Kayla for 15 years. She trusts you more than anyone. If anyone can get through to her, it's you." Sarah nodded slowly. She knew what she had to do. The next morning, Sarah arrived with a kitten bottle filled with specialized formula. She sat on the floor outside the glass, directly in Kayla's line of sight. Kayla approached cautiously, the limp kitten pressed against her chest. Sarah held up a small stuffed animal, about the size of the real kitten. Very slowly, deliberately, she demonstrated. She held the bottle to the toy's mouth. She made gentle, encouraging sounds. She repeated the action 3 times. Kayla watched intently. Sarah placed the bottle in the transfer drawer, a secure passage used for giving medication to the gorillas. She pushed it through. Kayla stared at it, then at the kitten, then at Sarah. For a long, terrible moment, nothing happened. Then Kola reached out. Her massive fingers closed around the tiny bottle with impossible delicacy. She brought it to the kitten's face. The kitten's nose twitched. Its mouth opened slightly. It latched onto the bottle's nipple and began to suck, weak but desperate. Kayla's eyes went wide. She looked at Sarah through the glass. Sarah placed her hand on the window, tears streaming down her face. "Good girl," she whispered. "You're such a good mama." Kayla made a soft rumbling sound, the vocalization gorillas make when content, when things are right. For 2 weeks, this became their routine. Sarah brought bottles 4 times daily. Kayla fed the kitten, whom the staff had begun calling Spark, for his bright ginger-orange tabby fur, with astounding gentleness. The transformation was remarkable. Within 3 days, Spark went from barely moving to exploring Kola's massive enclosure with kitten curiosity. He'd pounce on her fingers when she wiggled them. He'd climb up her arm and perch on her shoulder, mewing triumphantly. Kayla responded with a patience that stunned the staff. When Spark's tiny claws dug into her skin, something that would make any gorilla react aggressively, she simply adjusted him gently, moving him to a more comfortable position. The behaviors Kayla displayed mirrored those documented decades earlier with Coco, the famous gorilla who'd adopted kittens. Like Coco, Kayla would carry Spark on her back, the exact position mother gorillas used to transport infants through the forest. She'd arrange straw carefully around him when he slept, creating what looked like a tiny blanket. Most remarkably, Kayla began a daily ritual. Every morning, she'd gently sniff Spark from head to tail, the way gorillas identify family members through scent. She was claiming him as hers in the most fundamental gorilla way possible. "Look at this," Sarah said one afternoon, watching the monitors. Spark had fallen asleep draped across Kayla's head like a furry orange hat. Kayla sat perfectly still for 2 hours, barely breathing, so she wouldn't wake him. The other gorillas adapted remarkably. Jabari, the silverback who'd initially approached the kitten with suspicion, now kept watch whenever Kayla fed Spark. He'd position himself between them and the rest of the troop, creating a protective barrier. Maya, a younger female, would bring Kayla extra food during feeding times, as if understanding that Kayla needed strength to care for her unusual infant. "They've accepted him as part of the family," Dr. Chen observed, making notes. "This is unprecedented interspecies adoption behavior. The entire troop has restructured their social dynamics to accommodate a kitten." One morning, Sarah arrived to find Kayla had created a new nest, smaller than her own, perfectly sized for Spark. She'd woven it from the softest grasses and positioned it right next to where she slept. "She made him his own bed," Sarah whispered, photographing it. "She understands he needs his own space but wants him close." But as Spark grew stronger, the staff faced an impossible question. The emergency meeting happened on a Friday afternoon. 7 staff members sat around the conference table, watching footage of Spark, now almost 3 months old, playfully pouncing on Kayla's hand. "He can't stay," Dr. Chen said, her voice heavy. "Look at him. He's getting bolder, more energetic. Kola is so gentle with him, but gorillas play rough. One moment where she forgets her strength, one swat that's too hard." "He could be killed instantly," the zoo director finished quietly. Sarah stared at the footage. Kola was grooming Spark, her massive fingers impossibly delicate. "But she's happy for the first time in 28 years. Look at her. She's finally a mother." "I know," Dr. Chen said. "Believe me, I know. But our first responsibility is safety, for both of them. What happens when Spark reaches full size and his hunting instincts kick in? What happens when he runs and Kola chases him thinking it's play, but she's 180 pounds and he's 10? "We could build a barrier," someone suggested. "Keep them separated but visible." "For how long?" the director asked. "A cat lives 15-20 years. We keep them apart for 2 decades. That's not living. That's torture for both of them." The room fell silent. "There's another concern," Dr. Chen added, pulling up veterinary records. "Spark needs regular medical care, vaccines, dental work eventually. We can't safely sedate Kayla every time we need to examine him. And we can't take him from her for vet visits without causing her severe distress. We saw what happened when we tried to retrieve him that first day." Sarah felt tears burning her eyes. She knew they were right. She hated that they were right. "What if—" Sarah's voice cracked. "What if I adopt him? He goes home with me, but I bring him here every day. Kola can see him through the glass. She'll know he's alive, safe." Dr. Chen looked at her for a long moment. "You'd do that? Every single day?" "Every single day," Sarah said firmly. "For as long as she needs it, for as long as he lives." The vote was unanimous. Spark would leave. But he'd never be far. The separation day came on a Tuesday morning. Sarah entered the enclosure, the first time in 3 weeks, carrying a small cat carrier. Kola knew immediately. She grabbed Spark and made a vocalization Sarah had never heard, desperate, pleading. Sarah sat down, tears falling. "I know. You were the perfect mama. But he has to go now. He'll be safe. I promise." Kayla looked at Spark, purring and oblivious. Then slowly, with trembling hands, she groomed him one last time. She licked his orange head with heartbreaking gentleness, then pressed her face to his, a gesture like a kiss. Then Kola turned and walked to the back of the enclosure. She sat down with her back to Sarah and the kitten. She didn't turn around. She didn't watch as Sarah gently placed Spark in the carrier and carried him toward the door. The sound Spark made, crying for Kola as Sarah took him away, broke everyone watching. The days after were brutal. Kola stopped eating. She arranged straw in the shape of a small body, Spark's exact size, and curled around it at night. Staff who'd studied Coco's grief recognized the pattern. Gorillas create proxies of who they've lost and care for them as if they might return. On day 4, Sarah brought Spark for an evening visit. When Kayla saw him through the glass, she ran to the window. Both hands pressed against it. Spark put his paws on the other side, mewing. Kayla made her rumbling sound. They stayed 40 minutes. The next morning, Kayla ate again. She understood. Spark was alive, safe, and she could see him. Every evening after, Sarah kept her promise. Kayla would place her hand on one side of the glass, Spark his paw on the other, purring, rumbling, as close to touching as they could get. 6 months later, Spark was a healthy adult cat, but Kayla still waited at the window every evening at 6 p.m. The staff noticed something else. Kayla had begun arranging small sticks and leaves into empty nests in her enclosure. Nests for a baby who wasn't there. "She's still making beds for him," Sarah whispered one evening. "Still taking care of him in her heart." Because love doesn't end when distance separates us. It doesn't stop when goodbye comes too soon. Real love, mother's love, lives forever in the small rituals, the empty nests, the hand pressed against glass, waiting. Did you enjoy this story? After seeing how Kayla loved Spark across every barrier, do you believe animals can feel maternal love as deeply as humans do? Yes or no? Let us know in the comments below. If you like the story, subscribe to this channel and leave a like. Thanks so much for listening. See you in the next video. Have a great day.